We often use the word accident to describe a commercial truck crash. It implies bad luck. It implies that something random happened that couldn't have been avoided. But after years of litigating truck cases, I can tell you most crashes aren't bad luck. They are predictable, and they are the predictable result of a company deciding that safety is too expensive. So today I'm going to give you 5 signs of a trucking company that doesn't really care about safety and why that puts you at risk. First sign is, how do they get their drivers? When there's a driver shortage, safe companies maintain their high standards and they train better. They wait for the right candidates. Dangerous companies lower their standards and just skip the training. I sued a trucking company once. Actually, I sued them twice. 2 separate severe crashes. And I discovered after digging through their corporate records and quote unquote safety meeting minutes that they had a large contract to fill and that they desperately needed drivers. So they offered bounties to their other employees. If they brought in another driver, they would pay those employees as a reward. They then took these new drivers and they threw them into the driver's seat without training them at all, without making sure that they knew how to drive the particular truck and the trailer they were hauling, because they were under the gun to get this contract finished. 2 weeks later, that new driver nearly killed my client in a crash when he failed to yield at an intersection while driving a new piece of equipment. The second sign is, what do they do after the hire? Trucking companies are required to train new drivers and ongoing training for their existing drivers. Even if those drivers have past experience, they need to be trained on the particular piece of equipment that they're going to be operating. Good companies do this. Some companies skip this step. They figure that if you have a CDL, you're adequately trained. This company I mentioned, we went through the records in both lawsuits. I looked at the training manuals, the checklist, the ride-along logs. There was almost nothing. They didn't have time to train their new drivers. They had a contract to fill. A company that cares about safety, their safety and yours, invests time before the keys go in the ignition. A company that doesn't care treats training as optional. That slows down production, slows down revenue. In my case, they threw new drivers into the deep end, or rather, onto the highway without making sure that they knew how to swim. The third one is kind of shocking, but it's more common than you might think. It's what I call negligence by permission. A lot of companies claim on their websites, their promotional materials, even on their trucks, that they value safety. But what do they do behind closed doors? With this trucking company that I mentioned, I got their safety meeting records. They had a bad speeding problem. The company was getting a lot of tickets. People were complaining. They didn't tell their drivers to stop speeding. They told them to keep it down so that they didn't get pulled over and the company didn't get more tickets. Think about that. The company was literally telling the drivers it was okay to break the law as long as you didn't get caught. And here's the kicker. They weren't really mad about the speeding or the dangers it posed. They were mad about the cost to them, to the bottom line. When a company worries more about the cost of a fine than the risk of a crash, you know exactly where their priorities lie. Sign number 4, how do they handle safety training? In the trucking industry, you're supposed to have safety meetings to correct bad habits. You're supposed to have a system to correct and penalize bad driving, and to review past crashes to learn from them. In this company, safety meetings were optional. They left it up to the police to decide who was responsible. This particular company used to have bonuses for safe driving records, but they got rid of that. And you know what they did instead? They would buy their employees a brand new pickup truck if they stayed with a company for 40 years, regardless of their record. They valued loyalty, not safety. And finally, number 5, where do they spend their money on safety? Safe companies invest in safety. They buy resources and guides for their drivers. They send them to trainings. They hire consultants who know they can make improvements to safety. They invest money in safety because they know it's right for the business and they know it's right for the community. This company knew their safety scores were bad. I pointed out to them. And when I sued them the first time, I made them pay for those bad safety scores. So what did they do? Did they hire a new safety director to retrain their drivers? Did they take safety more seriously? Did they slow down their trucks? No, they hired a consultant and they stopped putting all of their dirty details in those meeting minutes. This consultant's job wasn't there to make the fleet safer. It was to make those scores look better so that their insurance rates went down. They wanted to make things look safer on paper without actually changing the dangerous culture on the road. It's like painting over a crack on a bridge. It may look better, but it's still going to collapse. In safety science, we call this the Swiss cheese model. One mistake usually doesn't cause a catastrophe, but when you line up the holes of multiple mistakes, desperate hiring, no training, permission to speed, lack of enforcement, and a lack of investment in safety, these accidents become inevitable. If you see trucks from these kinds of companies on the road, give them extra space. And if you or a loved one has been involved in a crash with a commercial truck, remember, the crash didn't start on the highway. It likely started in a boardroom or years earlier. If you or a loved one has been involved in a crash involving a semi or other commercial truck, please contact my office for a free consultation.